Buenas tardes, habla Sergio, aquí un servidor. Quiero compartir este video. Voy a entrevistar a la señora María Robles. Ella trabaja con la oficina de Marc Veasey, representante del distrito 30, yo pienso. A ver cómo nos va. Ojalá puedan ustedes tener buena información sobre el tema que vamos a hablar hoy, es de la situación de inmigrantes sin documentación. Ojalá nos vaya bien.
Okay. So here we go. This is Sergio Garza with Northside Neighbors y Vecinos of Fort Worth. I am really proud and pleased to bring this to you guys. I hope you guys are having a great Friday afternoon. And today I'm with Miss Maria Robles.
Good to see you. Thank you for coming.
Good afternoon. So the last time that we saw each other was at the Northside Association's meeting that we had in the community center there in the Northside of Fort Worth.
Yep.
And you stood up and said some things that were really powerful, in my opinion. And they're things that very rarely other people say. And some of those things were, I have like a 3-tier question. I'm gonna start off with it. We're gonna do this in English first real quick and then see if we can transfer to Spanish.
Okay.
But we're gonna talk about immigration statuses, right? Oh, I'm sorry, so who are you with first, Ms. Maria?
Maria Robles, Constituent Services Representative at Congressman Marc Veasey's office.
Fantastic.
I'm in the Dallas District office.
Dallas District. So I did have to drive to Dallas, but happy to do this. The questions that I have are going to be regarding immigration status and what's going on with this administration and what our residents can expect, both in their legal and illegal statuses, we're getting very sensitive on what to call our constituents.
Undocumented.
Yes, undocumented, not illegal. I'm sorry. So my first question is very simple. Can we take away a person's citizenship?
So there's different avenues if you've been naturalized and there's some type of fraud that the USCIS can prove. Again, I'm not an attorney.
Right.
This is just based off of what I've learned throughout the years. And if you're a born citizen, no, definitely no. A whole bunch of experts have already weighed in on that.
Yeah.
If you're a naturalized citizen like myself, they would have to go through a specific process and find fraudulent activity or fraudulent means that brought you to become a citizen,
right,
from what I've heard. But just because you decide that you don't want naturalized citizens to be here anymore, that's yet to be
It's not going to happen. It hasn't happened yet.
Hasn't happened yet, and hopefully we don't see it.
Right. So now that's the question number 2. Is there a way for legal residents to lose their residency?
Definitely. So lawful permanent residents, which people recognize as green card holders, because they used to be green. They're pink now, but they're still green in everyone's eyes. There is certain misdemeanors that add up to a felony, certain crimes that have no waivers per se, can get you either in removal proceedings or removed, deported, your green card taken away. A lot of those, some of those are weapons charges. Right now we're seeing a lot of DUI convictions that have now turned into a problem for a lawful permanent resident. Drugs and smuggling, like really big felony charges, used to be the norm that we saw for a person to lose their lawful residency status. But now, even charges that have been as old as 20 years, you're now potentially could be looked at to be put into that type of process. Again, this is just what I've heard and what I've seen has been happening, that has been going around as far as, can I lose my green card? Or can I be detained when I come back from the country that they're visiting? As they come into the country, if you had a prior removal order 10, 20 years ago and you've never had issues, let's remember that CBP, Customs and Border Patrol, has always had that power. It's up to them to let you in or not. And if they ran a background check when you came in and something popped up, it is up to their discretion. Now, it doesn't mean that you're going to automatically lose your green card. We've been told there's a process, right? You would be either detained, depending on the circumstance, or given a NTA, notice to appear, before a judge. We still live under the Constitution, right? Due process. Then you would have a opportunity to defend yourself, to hire a lawyer. But you could potentially face losing your green card.
Let's say that I am a legal resident and I have a green card, and I go to visit my family in Monterrey, and I have a warrants out for my arrest because I had unpaid tickets. Would that be a problem?
So we haven't seen that per se being a problem just for unpaid tickets, but you can't rule it out, because if there's a warrant out there and you're coming across the border, that's law enforcement. They can decide, oh, well, you're a person of interest, maybe investigate you more, or it could be that they contact that office that has the warrant for you and turn you over. We haven't seen any of that, but those are potential avenues the way it can go.
This change that we're talking about with the legal residents, when did that start? With this presidency, this
so
new?
The changes as far as administering to their full power, we've seen it with this administration. Their full power of entry for a person that's a lawful permanent resident, they've always had the discretion. It's all about the administration, the directions that they're getting from higher ups on who they want to let in and who they don't, or who they want further investigated or not. And so that we've seen increase with this administration.
So enforcement has changed in the recent months.
Definitely.
So we have to be careful with who we invite to the quinceañera in Guadalupe, because Tío Juan may not be coming back. Just an example.
So you want to be very cautious, right?
Yes.
And you want to be making decisions based on your own personal immigration story, your personal immigration case.
Mm-hmm.
If someone has an old charge and conviction that maybe was considered a high misdemeanor or a low-level felony, if that's even the case. I'm not an attorney again, but if it was me, I would be checking with an attorney before I left the country, because the last thing you want to do is to find that out at the border, either at the DFW if you're coming via air, or at the border if you're trying to cross by ground. So you want to make sure that you know specifically what's on your background, what's the potential risk, and then make a decision based off of that.
So basically, know what's going on, be prepared for the outcome, and make the best decisions that is for you and your family.
Yeah, most definitely. And not let just the social media guide what you do, right? Because the last thing we want to do is people and families across the state and across the district to be afraid to just operate in normal life. Everybody doesn't have that background maybe that could potentially keep them out of the country. If they're a lawful resident, never been arrested, never been in trouble, then we haven't seen any issues at all. I myself have family members that just became lawful residents last year. They've come and gone to Mexico on vacation, no issues. So it's not as heightened as we've seen in social media saying, oh, well, you can't go to, in my case, you can't go to Mexico because if you're a green card holder, you're not going to be let in. We haven't seen that happen just to everybody. We've seen some instances that have been reported across the news, across the country, because there was an issue that specific CBP officer decided either to detain the person and research further, or actually detain and refer them to a judge.
Okay, so that's a lot of really good information for people. See, that this affects everyone, not just people with a status that is not been determined to be legal. So my third question is for people. There's going to be two categories. Is there any hope for a person that is in this country undocumented that has a felony to get documentation?
So it all depends on the type of felony. Again, I'm not an attorney. What I've read and what we've seen is that there are different attorneys that deal with criminal defense that have potentially been able to reopen some cases, renegotiate. There's a lot of different things that criminal defense attorneys know and can do depending on the situation, depending on the charge. So it's very important before, if you do have those backgrounds, that you check with the immigration attorney and the criminal defense attorney to see, okay, now I'm in this situation, what are my options? If any options, and make sure, because I have seen cases that have been 5-10 years were closed, but due to some circumstances, the attorney was able to reopen those cases, renegotiate the final charge, and then that made a different impact on their immigration case.
Therein lies the problem that I see for a lot of our people, is that there is a glimmer of hope in that. For example, I've been here 22 years. I have 2 DUIs, just an example. Okay, so if I may be able to reopen and qualify, it opens us up for abuse and for situations where, you know what, I'll go ahead and give me $2,000, see what I could do. And we've all experienced, we know someone who's experienced that, where we have been taken advantages of. So what would you recommend to someone who is in that situation, and what is the best kind of path of to make sure that the person that they're consulting is on the up and up?
So making sure you check the Texas State Bar Association, see if there's any reports there. Also, there's a list of pro bono attorneys that our office has, and making sure that you ask those questions. What are the probabilities? I guess do your research on your specific issue. Have a friend, a person that can help you do the research to see what are the probabilities. Because we've seen a bunch of cases that come to our office asking for help when we know for sure that it's not going to be that easy if you have 2-3 DUIs in the past, and we're not attorneys, right? So all we can say is, here's a list of pro bono attorneys, and make sure that you give them all the information. Because even though something doesn't show in one FOIA, the Freedom of Information Act, where you can request from CBP, USCIS, FBI, your background check, even if one thing doesn't show up, but it exists, it doesn't mean that it's erased. It happened to us in my husband's case, right? A removal, the only removal he ever had was in El Paso, 1996, 97. And when we asked for the FOIA to go, we were getting ready to file for his documents, never showed up. And I was like, nope. This is when it happened, on or about, this is where it happened, and we don't know what happened because it's been so many years, and they didn't give him a paper, but we know it happened. So our attorney luckily reached out to CBP in El Paso and said, oh yeah, it's right here. Here's what happened, and I'll send you over a sheet. So all he did was send over a sheet that they had in that office, but it was there. Now, if we had said, oh, well, we're just not going to disclose it and it'll be fine. No, don't ever think that they don't have a record, because if it happened, then more likely they have a record.
So, yeah, the other thing is it would be a great idea to have like a review board, someone that would say this attorney has he's a 7.8 on a 1 to 10 scale. And because right now, like what you're saying is really powerful. If you have a bad experience with a certain attorney, make sure you tell somebody.
Yeah. And write a review.
Write a review, because reviews are powerful, and you're talking about people's lives. The second portion of the question is people who are here undocumented that have no felonies. What is the best advice for them today in April? It's 2025. What would you say that, I know you mentioned in the meeting, be patient and don't believe everything you hear.
So let's say that in my situation, I'm a citizen, thank God, and my husband was not a citizen. If we were still going through that process, one, I would make sure you don't drink and drive. You don't call attention to yourself making any mistake. And then figure out, what's my case? What's my potential immigration case if I were to be detained? Do you know what's in your background? Have you requested your FOIA from all the agencies, FBI, CBP, USCIS. What do they have with my name and my A number? If you've ever been arrested or detained by ICE, or if you've ever submitted a document, a petition for yourself, someone has petitioned for you, you'll have an A number. Other than that, your date of birth, name, last name, all of those identifying factors, you can request those files to know what do they have under my name, fingerprints, all of that.
That's called the FOIA.
The FOIA, Freedom of Information Act. And so if you do that, make sure that if you're undocumented, you want to do it through somebody that's either a nonprofit organization or an attorney, because again, you don't want to call attention to you and say, hey, I'm right here, and provide your address, right? That would just be Maria Robles' suggestion. The other thing is, if I get picked up, am I able to show that I've been here more than 2 years, that I have no criminal background history, and that I have good moral character? So do I have friends? Do I have a coach maybe? Do I have a pastor? People that are citizens or lawful residents that can write me a letter of reference that says, Maria Robles participates at church, at San Mateo Catholic Church, has been a member for so and so long, and I know she has a family. This is Maria. Can somebody that's not your family write you that type of letter in support of your good moral character? And do you have all the proof that shows you've been here, let's say 10, 15 years? Because when it comes down to it, and you see your either the nonprofit or the attorney, these are things that would be able to help your case. And then if we have children under the age of 18, have I decided what I'm going to do if I'm detained and my wife is detained, or both parents are detained? Have I written down what their allergies are to medicine, to foods, doctor's information, bank account? Did I give my daughter's son over the age of 18 or someone that I can trust access to my bank accounts? Your houses. Do you have a power of attorneys to move all that stuff? Just because you're removed from the country or detained, it doesn't mean you don't have, those assets aren't yours anymore. But a lot of people think that because they're detained or removed, that those assets are gone. And that's not the case.
Do you have a list of, for example, what you just mentioned is a very substantial list. Do you have somewhere on a website the list of things that you just mentioned? For example, power of attorney, maybe the children's medicine situation, power attorney for the children, what's going to happen if we both get removed from the country or detained. You also mentioned to make your FOIA, you don't need an attorney for that, right?
You don't. You can go to a nonprofit. The risk there again is you're submitting a document to the federal government and adding your address. So if you don't mind that, then you would do it by yourself.
Right.
But in this circumstance, you might want to have someone that's a nonprofit that can help you with that.
So it's their
office.
Yes. Okay, so you go to a nonprofit, ask for a FOIA. That's step one. Mm-hmm. Step two is pretend that you're not in the country. Pretend you're already gone. What would be the questions you would ask yourself? Who's going to take care of my kids?
Who's going to take care of my kids, and who has the authority to either fly with them or drive them to me where I'm at? Department of State has an actual form in there, a travel form for minors. Can you sign that and prepare? I don't know that anyone has a list, but now everything is on Google. So if you could probably Google list in preparation for family emergency or eviction, or what is it? Natural disaster planning. Plan as if there was a disaster happening, because when that happens, at least in my case, it felt like that. It felt like it was a disaster in my own world, right? So planning as if it was being prepared for a natural disaster. If I'm in another country, who has access to my bank accounts? Now, more often than not, the banks have access online. So can you give that access to someone, your children, your relatives that you trust, and then move money and deal with that way, so that you don't get caught with no money and being detained or being sent to another country that you don't know?
There's a book that we read in business called I'm Dead, Now What? And it just speaks of a business owner not being ready. And if they're going to, educate in that, it's really important to do that with a family. I've never thought about it that way. So this is really powerful stuff. So I'm going to see if I can get a list of things, and then I'll share that with you. And if we can, make the list, maybe you don't need this, and based on experience, then I think that would be really helpful to get that. What are you going to call it? The disaster. What did you call it?
So in my organizing days, I saw a list like that. I think it was around the first Trump administration. It was called Family Preparedness Plan, and it was a Catholic church out of California that put it together.
Really? FPP.
So it should be out there. I don't have a copy of it anymore, but it should be out there. It was a Family Preparedness Plan.
So these are my hermanos that are not here legally, but don't have felonies. This is just
really for anybody, because maybe you're a mixed status family like I was. I didn't, when I was filling out my family preparedness, because at that time I was still in the process, and my daughter had just petitioned for him, so he didn't have documents. I had to go through that, and I hadn't realized until after I was writing stuff down that my kid back then was 16, 17. She's allergic to shrimp. Not that she can't tell anybody, but I hadn't even thought of that, right? So that list really helped me put down on paper the important things, because if somebody doesn't know, they don't know what they don't know. Right. And so how can they take care of my kids if I'm not putting it out there? And I hadn't even thought of that. Food allergies. And that was one of the boxes. Any of the kids have food allergies? Medicine allergies. Do they take medicine? I was like, I never thought of that. I always thought about, documents and birth certificates and the schools, but never once did that cross my mind, because it's something that we all know in the family, right? But doesn't mean everybody else knows.
So this applies to everyone. Even so, I'm not going to separate the felonies you've already covered, and the people who don't have felonies we've covered. So the last thing I want to ask you is about your experience in the real world. There has been a lot of explosive. They're coming to get you. They're over here at Home Depot. They're taking people away. And in your experience,
I can't speak for anybody else. And I'm not denying that it isn't happening, because we've seen those types of videos live from different states, right? But I've been asking, since I've been seeing those videos, I've been asking in the communities that I'm a part of and around the area, are there any raids? Where? Who can you tell me? John Smith, I know, he's my neighbor. He was taken the same way as the video from California, Arizona, Pennsylvania. Not one. I haven't gotten any reports that say ICE agent came to the door asking for Juan Hernandez, pushed the door open and took us all, or took them all. Nobody, nothing. I've asked around. I've asked people that I know, people in local government offices when we do community forums and community events. Not one. Now, I have heard where they've picked up, for example, a person that went to work and works at the airport. And I was appalled, right? Yes, this is one that I can investigate. Turns out the person had a charge for fraudulent documents. So they were there to look for him, for a specific person, because he had this charge. So is that a raid? No, it's the way the administration is saying is targeted enforcement. Now, that doesn't take away from the fear that we all feel because we're brown, because we're not blue-eyed, blonde hair. But you also can't live under the fear that everywhere you're going, ICE is going to show up. I mean, ICE has existed for many years now. And I haven't seen one case where this says, oh, they're just going down every single house in this neighborhood. And if that's happening, our offices, any congressional office, should be told about it, because then we need to go and ask the questions. You know, what was the if they can tell us, they'll tell us what they were doing and what they were trying to achieve. We've also heard that they're going to schools. Well, we haven't heard about any local schools, but we have seen the reports from California going into the schools. But again, the Constitution is not suspended. Just because this administration came into play or came into power, that didn't suspend the Constitution. You still have constitutional rights as a business owner, as a homeowner, as a school. It happened in California. And what happened? Nothing. The ICE agents went, asked for I think a third and a sixth grader, which is just mind-blowing, right? And their reasoning was, oh, it's a welfare check. But what did the administration do? Doesn't matter. Do you have a judge's order? Couldn't produce one. Guess what? They couldn't come in. Your children are safe at school because there's already policies in place so that nobody can take your kids. And we haven't heard anything around the area, right? In Fort Worth, Dallas, Arlington, never have heard any attempts from any ICE officers trying to go onto the premises. And all of those school districts have policies in place, right, to keep kids safe. So all of the fear that's going around, I've yet to see a case, and I hope never to see a case.
Yeah, that's the big thing is children were expressing fear because of what adults were posting online. And listen, the intention of the person posting something is a good meaning intention. It's not
to cause fear.
No, it's just
they're just afraid for them.
Right. And I understand that, which is why when you stood up at the meeting and said what you said, no one else is saying that. Not the news. There have been a couple of people who say, listen, calm down, because it was really panicky there about 2 months ago. My final question is, what about those people who have kind of played with like taxes? They've been here a long time and they've filed for taxes. They've gotten. Could that ever come back and bite them?
So we heard the last news on that was that IRS is sharing with ICE on a specific case-by-case basis based on certain criteria. So when I had a meeting with the IRS, they were very adamant to say, no, yes, we've received ICE requests for information, but not even the IRS commissioner has free, to see all of the information. So no, we haven't allowed it. And the last news was that they are requesting specific case by case for a person of interest that they want the information for. And that'll be evaluated, and then it'll be decided if it's shared. So no, my family included, before we were naturalized citizen and a lawful resident, we paid our taxes. Because why? We all hope that one day we'll be able to file for lawful residency, which, I guess the majority of us dream of, right? And what is our fear? That they don't come back and say, oh, well, you haven't paid taxes. So not everyone, because I can't say that everyone is paying their taxes that has an ITIN, right? Because that's what they give us. But the majority of us are paying the taxes, and they're hoping and going off of the promise that information is safe. Up to now, it's still safe. They're saying that the only way that they're giving out that information to ICE is on a case-by-case basis, and it's being very scrutinized and looked at as to why they need information that they're requesting, and it's not just a blanket everyone's information.
The final thought, in English, is going to be that even though things are the way they are, and we are where we are, they're changing dramatically. Would you say that there's changes that are happening? They've already changed, and they're going to continue to change. If they do anything for the people who are here without documentation, maybe beneficial. Do you see anything like that coming down the pike?
Unfortunately, I don't see any of that because that hasn't been the sentiment to begin with, neither in the campaigns nor now. That's just the feeling I get. But the other thing is we can't, I know it's inevitable to be in fear, but you can't be in fear and paralyzed. It's better to be in fear and knowing and prepared for what can happen and then live your life, because we don't know, we don't have a magic ball that will tell us what's going to happen. But if we're prepared, then at least we still have that fear in the back of our head, but you can only be as prepared as you can, and then God's in control.
Ok, ahora voy a preguntar en español rápidamente. Vamos a asesorar lo que primero pregunté, lo de la ciudadana. Uno que ya es ciudadano, ¿se le puede quitar su ciudadanía?
De nuevo, no soy abogada, es nada más lo que he leído y mi experiencia. Y lo que nos han dicho los expertos es que si es ciudadano naturalizado, que quiere decir que no nació aquí, si hay alguna investigación en su naturalización, en cómo llegó a esa naturalización y se descubre que hubo fraude de cualquier índole, entonces puede ser que le puedan poner en un proceso de quitarle esa ciudadanía. Pero si usted nació aquí en Estados Unidos, entonces no hay manera de que le puedan quitar esa ciudadanía porque nació en el país.
La segunda pregunta es para nuestros residentes que son residentes legales. ¿Cuáles son las prácticas? Porque estamos hablando de que si uno es residente legal, pero tiene ciertos cargos criminales, es posible de que se pueda perder la residencia o... Bueno, vamos a contestar esa pregunta primero.
De nuevo, no es una opinión legal, es solamente lo que yo sé y lo que ha sido mi experiencia. Y lo que nos han dicho, lo que hemos visto es que si tienes cargos de felonía o cargos misdemeanors que son altos o múltiples misdemeanors que equivalen a una felonía, eso potencialmente lo puede poner en el camino a perder la residencia. Pero de nuevo, necesitan revisar su caso con un abogado penalista y un abogado de migración, porque ellos dos pueden ver si pueden reabrir ese caso donde le dieron los cargos, si pueden negociar a que reduzcan los cargos, dependiendo el cargo que sea, tiene un impacto en su caso de migración diferente, ¿no? Diferentes cargos tienen diferentes impactos en su situación migratoria. Entonces, no automáticamente pensemos que si tenemos un cargo de felonía, ya está perdido el caso. Es muy importante que la gente se asesore, tenga asesoría de un penalista, un abogado penalista, y después así decida cómo continuar.
Esa raíz de luz que se nos da a veces nos abre a nosotros para hacer gente tome ventaja de nosotros. ¿Qué consejo les da a gente que tenga esa necesidad de consultar a un abogadista penal?
Entonces, lo muy importante es revisar quizás las páginas de sitio de internet, ir al Texas Bar Association, la Asociación de Barras de Abogados de Migración, y ver qué son qué está diciendo la gente que tuvo un caso con ellos. Tiene una experiencia buena, una experiencia mala, y todo el tiempo no nada más se quede con la opinión de un abogado. Puede tener diferentes consultas, 2, 3 consultas, y ver si le dicen lo mismo. Y tenga mucho cuidado con aquel abogado que después de que 3, 4 le dijeron que no, le promete, págame $5,000, $10,000 y yo lo arreglo. Porque tiene que pensar, pues, ¿por qué los otros 3 me dijeron que no se podía y me pide tanto y sí se puede? Seamos conscientes y hagámonos esa pregunta, porque a veces estamos tan desesperados por recibir la respuesta que queremos, que en mi tiempo de organizadora miraba casos que no era posible, basado en lo que sabíamos, que prometían, págame $10,000 y aunque te hayan agarrado con manejar borracho y tener una criatura menor de edad en tu auto, te voy a sacar con permiso de trabajo. Y te quedabas, ¿cómo? No es que no se pueda hacer, pero no es tan fácil como se lo ponían a la familia. Entonces es muy importante tener eso en cuenta. ¿A cuántos abogados he ido a ver, a consultar? ¿Y qué me dijeron?
Sí. Otra cosa, si uno ya tiene una experiencia con un abogado, positiva o negativa, compartan esa experiencia por medio de las internet, por redes, reviews o lo que sea. La segunda parte es para nuestros hermanos que tienen legal, su green card, residentes legales que van para México. ¿Cuáles son los riesgos en esa visita?
O sea, hemos escuchado muchos en las redes sociales que no los dejan entrar, que salieron del país y luego les quitaron su residencia. Nosotros en el distrito no tenemos ningún caso. Lo que sí es de precaución, tener precaución. Si es residente legal, cada uno de nosotros sabemos qué tenemos en nuestro historial penal, ¿no? Si fuimos alguna vez acusados o cargados, puesto un cargo penal, una felonía, muchos misdemeanors o cargos de bajo grado que puedan equivaler a una felonía, ver qué es nuestro caso específicamente y no confiarnos si tenemos también una orden de remoción anterior de hace 10, 15 años. Necesitamos asesorarnos con un abogado penalista y de migración para que vea su caso individual, porque los detalles de cada caso individual tienen mucho que ver, porque los oficiales de CBP, Customs and Border Patrol, que están en el aeropuerto o en los puertos de entrada en las fronteras, tienen la discreción de decir, usted tiene este cargo, lo voy a referir a ver a una juez para que consideren quitarle su residencia, o voy a detenerlo y lo voy a estar entrevistando para sacar más información y quizás lo detenga. Entonces, aunque este poder lo han tenido siempre en la frontera, no se había ejercido tanto como ahora. Entonces, no es para meter miedo, pero hay que tener precaución y ser conscientes de que ahora estamos en una administración muy diferente y que ahora la mentalidad ha sido no dejen entrar a las más personas que puedan. Entonces, si estamos con ese potencial riesgo, evalúe su situación migratoria antes de salir, porque lo último que quiere es tener ese problema en la frontera y tener que lidiar con él afuera de Estados Unidos.
Mis últimas dos preguntas, una va a ser de que lo que usted dijo en el meeting de Northside Association hace como 2 semanas. En su experiencia, ¿usted ha visto que estén levantando gente así nomás
lo que se llaman las redadas? No niego que hay en el país. No quiero quitarle el mérito a las agencias de noticias, y sí hemos visto que hay en California, en New Jersey, en Arizona, pero aquí en el distrito yo he preguntado dentro de las comunidades que conozco y nadie ha podido decirme en cierto lugar había una redada donde iban casa por casa. Entonces sí tenemos ese miedo de que pueda aparecer migración en cierto lugar y tienen el derecho de preguntarle su estatus migratorio a cualquier persona. Incluso pueden ir a su casa y tocar la puerta y preguntar por Juan Rodríguez, aunque Juan Rodríguez no vive ahí. Pero por eso todavía, como dije otra vez, la Constitución no se suspendió porque vino administración. Bajo la Constitución usted tiene derecho todavía de quién entre a su casa y poder defenderse, decir, no voy a contestar la puerta, no la voy a abrir. Pero hasta ahorita en nuestro distrito no hemos encontrado ninguna persona que pueda decir a mi hermano, a mi amigo, a mi vecino, fue migración y fue a tocar puertas en todo este vecindario. Entonces sí hay razón por tener miedo de que pueda tocarnos estar en la situación no indicada en el momento indicado. Pero tampoco podemos dejarnos llevar por ese miedo y paralizarnos.
Usted dijo algo muy importante cuando la estaba entrevistando. Usted dijo que tener esperanza, no dejar de vivir, pero estar preparados. Usted también mencionó un documento, una serie de documentos que nos puede ayudar nosotros a estar preparados por si pasa la tragedia de que nos separen de nuestras familias, de que nos detengan, de que nos lleven a un lugar donde no estamos cerca de nuestras familias. Esos documentos, no hay una lista, pero usted puede referir a lo que estaba hablando.
Entonces, en mi vida pasada, cuando era organizadora, había una organización católica sin fines de lucro que puso un plan de preparación familiar, y lo que tenía eso era cartas poderes donde asignaba usted a quién podía tomar decisiones para sus hijos, como llevarlos a la escuela, sacarlos, medicamentos que tome, a qué son alérgicos, carta poder o un documento dándole poder a alguien para accesar sus cuentas financieras, quizás hacer movimientos en sus préstamos de hipoteca. Tenemos que estar al tanto de qué es nuestra situación, qué documentos pueden ayudarnos si es que no estuviéramos ahí para atenderlos. Yo creo que nuestra comunidad o nuestra cultura hispana no nos gusta pensar en la muerte, pero esto no es atraer la tragedia, es estar preparado ante una potencial tragedia, porque en nuestras vidas separarnos de nuestras familias, para mí, por ejemplo, en lo personal, era una tragedia que podía pasar. Entonces le comentaba que yo ni siquiera me había acordado de que mi hija es alérgica a los camarones, ¿no? Y toma medicina. Entonces es como algo que ya sabemos en la familia, pero si alguien más tuviera a cargo de ella, pues ellos no iban a saber. Entonces son cositas así que debemos de pensar, no para tener miedo, pero para vivir en la nueva realidad y estar preparados. Y así dejarlo en la mano de Dios, pero ya hicimos todo lo posible en nuestras manos y estar preparados. ¿Qué es mi caso migratorio? ¿Qué tiene migración en mi nombre y mis huellas? Si me llegan a detener, ¿cómo voy a pelear? ¿Quién va a estar ahí para abogar por mí? Seamos miembros de iglesias, de clubes de soccer, de clubes, para que alguien más, aparte de su familia, pueda escribir y decir, esta persona es parte de esta comunidad y merece o quisiera que se quedara. Porque acordémonos que para migración, el sufrimiento de la familia es esperado. El sufrimiento extremo es cuando puede demostrar que usted, si lo arrancan de esa comunidad, va a dejar una huella.
Sino que lo que se puede hacer, aparte de prepararse con su familia, tener documentos preparados donde otra gente puede decir, esta persona es coach de soccer por 6 años, trabajó con nosotros, tener cartas de recomendación. De diferentes lugares, entre más mejor, para que sepa si en dado caso algo pase, ya tenga usted su defensa lista. Pero no necesita abogado para hacer eso.
Para hacer eso, lo único que sí, recomendaciones, es que vaya a ver una agencia sin fines de lucro para no pedir usted solo o sola su FOIA, la información que migración o CBP tiene ante usted.
La voy a interrumpir. ¿Qué es la FOIA? Perdón.
FOIA es el archivo que cualquier agencia tiene de usted, ya sea migración, Customs and Border Patrol de la frontera o el FBI. Entonces eso va usted a someter su información, sus huellas, por supuesto su dirección. Entonces si usted no está seguro de que quiera dar su dirección, por eso le recomendamos que hable con una agencia sin fines de lucro y diga, quiero pedir mi FOIA. Pero lo demás de recaudar sus documentos de la luz, de facturas, de sus contratos de alquiler, de todos los años que ha estado aquí, usted debe de estar preparado para por lo menos demostrar que ha estado aquí más de 10 años. Entonces quizás eso le pueda ayudar a preparar su defensa. O
ayudar a la que le va a defender en el día que lo defienda. Porque uno no tiene un abogado listo, preparado. Uno de repente, oye, ya me pescaron, me tienen detenido. Al abogado, y el abogado con quién va a hablar si tiene este folleto ya listo con información, con lo que usted está pidiendo, con la FOIA. Es un caso más, pues ya más preparado para la tragedia. La última pregunta sería, ¿usted tiene algo quiere decirnos a nuestra comunidad acerca de lo que está pasando?
Pues lo que está pasando ya es inevitable, ¿no? Todos vivimos con el miedo de que alguien nos llame y diga que se han sido separados. Es muy importante estar preparados y es muy importante considerar ir al internet y buscar el formulario de ICE que deja que nuestra oficina o la oficina de otro congresista pida información sobre su caso. ¿Por qué? Porque ahí podemos ayudarle a su familia a saber dónde está usted. Si usted tiene alguna queja, que le digan no me están dando de comer, medicinas, diferentes situaciones que se presentan en los centros de detención. Si alguien es detenido, luego le van a asignar un número de A. Ese número de A va a estar o en su gafeta o en su pulsera que le dan de plástico. Ese número de A es clave porque es como un número de seguro social, equivalente a un número de seguro social, porque es único a la persona. Y cuando nuestra oficina manda una pregunta de ICE de dónde está, nos piden su nombre, fecha de nacimiento, país de origen y ese número de A. Entonces, si la persona le llama, pues asegúrese de pedir ese número de A y considerar llenar esa forma, firmarla, pero no ponerle fecha, porque esas formas se caducen en 60 días. Entonces, wow, si pasa algo, su esposa, esposo, la persona que usted te confianza, puede ponerle la fecha y mandarla. O si tiene abogado, el abogado puede también ir y llevarle esa forma y mandárnosla a nosotros para que podamos asegurarnos que, aunque no podemos hacer mucho, podemos asegurarnos que esté bien, que esté salvo adentro.
¿Cómo se llama esa forma?
Dice Department of Homeland Security Privacy Waiver Authorization Disclosure to a Third Party.
Very good. Le voy a agradecer su tiempo, señora Robles, por lo que compartió conmigo. Agradezco lo que está haciendo por nuestra comunidad, y ojalá sigamos. Voy a tratar de conseguir esa lista de la iglesia que usted mencionó. Y también, como usted dijo, es cierto, ChatGPT o las otras pueden ya tener todo listo. Hasta sacan cosas que ni no pensamos nosotros.
Debe de haber una lista, sí, ya.
So, quiero agradecer su tiempo y un último mensaje.
Pues que participen en su comunidad y que le hagan falta a alguien más que no sea su familia para que luego puedan abogar. Y acuérdense que las oficinas de sus congresistas, el congresista Marc Veasey, están aquí al servicio de la comunidad. Todos los contribuyentes de su distrito tienen acceso a los servicios que tiene estas oficinas, ya sea con IRS para su reembolso, seguro social, Medicare, de los beneficios de los veteranos, beneficios o preguntas de FEMA, todas las agencias federales con las que usted esté lidiando y que ya no le contestaron o que no está moviéndose su caso. Nuestra oficina puede ir y decir qué está pasando con este caso. Y ese es un derecho de usted como contribuyente que vive en el distrito y de todos los contribuyentes en cada distrito. Bueno, utilícelo.
Bueno, muchas gracias y ojalá tenga un buen fin de semana.
Gracias igualmente.
Bye.